Commander Marcus Sterling spills coffee on a maintenance worker's uniform, an old ritual meant to humiliate. They thought she was just Maya Cross, a quiet nobody in coveralls. What they didn't know, she's the daughter of a legendary pilot and trained to fly the very aircraft they worship. Stick around, because when the B-2 Spirit malfunctions mid-drill and the elite freeze, it's Maya who takes the cockpit. As Sterling's empire crumbles under viral footage and soaring truth, one thing is clear: real skill doesn't wear a rank, it flies above it. We love to see where our viewers are from. Comment your location and the time you found this video. Subscribe to stay connected. The fluorescent lights of Shadowhawk Training Facility cast harsh shadows across Commander Marcus Sterling's perfectly pressed uniform as he watched the coffee spread across Maya Cross's maintenance coveralls. His polished commander's insignia caught the light, a symbol of 2 decades of unchallenged authority. Sterling allowed himself a slight smirk. These little accidents had become something of a tradition for dealing with those who didn't quite fit the Shadowhawk mold. Oh dear, how clumsy of me. Commander Marcus Sterling's voice dripped with mock concern, his 6'4" frame towering over the maintenance worker. The surrounding instructor's poorly concealed snickers created a familiar chorus that usually preceded surrender. But this time was different. The girl didn't flinch. The coffee's acrid smell filled Sterling's nostrils as he watched her, waiting for the tears, the stammered apology, the hasty retreat he'd seen 100 times before. Instead, Maya Cross met his gaze, her eyes carrying a steel he hadn't encountered in years. Something twisted in his stomach. Not quite fear, but an unsettling ripple in his carefully maintained order. "Sir." Maya's voice cut through the tension, steady and clear. "I believe your coffee belongs in a cup, not on my uniform." The hallway fell silent. Sterling's hand instinctively touched his commander's pin, a nervous habit he'd developed over years of maintaining control. Have you ever felt your authority challenged? Type control if you've witnessed power shake. A young instructor's phone appeared, its camera lens catching the confrontation. Sterling's jaw tightened. These moments weren't meant to be recorded. But before he could intervene, a voice rang out from behind him. "Ms. Cross, the simulator diagnostic reports are ready for your review. The FAA's counting on your expertise for the new safety protocols." Sterling's world tilted slightly. FAA. This maintenance worker had clearance he didn't know about. His fingers found his commander's pin again this time, gripping it hard enough to feel its edges bite into his palm. The whispers changed tone, carrying notes of uncertainty. Sterling watched Maya walk away, her coffee-stained uniform, a battle flag of defiance. His carefully constructed hierarchy seemed to waver like heat waves above a runway. In 20 years at Shadowhawk, Commander Marcus Sterling had never faced a challenge he couldn't crush. But as he stood in that hallway, watching the phone footage already uploading with Van Trinortworker Sterling, stain trending, a question burned brighter than the spilled coffee. Could decades of absolute control survive one maintenance worker's defiance? Sterling retreated to his office, the command pin on his chest feeling heavier than ever. Looking at his wall of achievements, he remembered his mentor's words. "Power isn't about rank, Marcus. It's about making sure they know their place." But for the first time, those words rang hollow. Every corridor of Shadowhawk held whispers of his authority. Every gleaming surface reflected his influence. Yet somehow, in the space of 5 minutes, a coffee-stained uniform had become a crack in his foundation. Commander Marcus Sterling straightened his pin one more time, unaware that this small act of discipline would trigger the biggest transformation in Shadowhawk's history. Will Commander Sterling's empire of intimidation survive this challenge? Subscribe to witness how one accident becomes an avalanche of change. Sterling's stain is just the beginning. Victoria Hawthorne stared at the security monitor, her manicured fingers drumming against the polished oak desk of her private office at Shadowhawk. The maintenance worker Maya Cross, moved with an unmistakable grace around the Phantom Wing's perimeter. Each step, each gesture revealing years of muscle memory that no ordinary cleaner could possess. Freeze frame. Victoria commanded the system, leaning closer. The golden wings pinned to her instructor's uniform caught the morning light, their weight suddenly oppressive against her chest. She remembered pinning them on 15 years ago, the pride, the sense of breaking barriers. Now they felt like shackles. The footage revealed more with each viewing. Maya's supposedly routine maintenance checks aligned perfectly with pre-flight inspection patterns. The way she traced her hand along the fuselage, checking for microscopic imperfections. How she measured angles with nothing but her trained eye. Victoria had taught these exact movements to countless cadets. Computer cross-reference personnel files. She ordered, her voice barely masking growing disquiet. The system hummed, and within seconds Captain David Cross's file illuminated her screen. The resemblance was undeniable. Maya had his eyes, his jawline. The legendary pilot who'd died pushing for equality in aviation training 2 decades ago. Victoria's hands trembled as she accessed deeper archives. Maya's application to the elite training program from 3 years ago, rejected. Reason: insufficient background. Her perfect test scores buried under layers of bureaucratic excuses. Commander Sterling's signature on every rejection. Just like Amanda Chen last year, Victoria whispered, pulling up another file. And James Rodriguez before that. A pattern emerged. Brilliant candidates, all from maintenance or support roles, all rejected. All bearing the signatures of Commander Sterling and herself. The distant roar of a training jet shook her office windows. Victoria reached for her coffee, now cold and bitter. The security footage continued to play, showing Maya expertly diagnosing a fault in the landing gear that 3 mechanics had missed. The maintenance workers' movements mirrored techniques Victoria herself had learned from Captain Cross before his tragic training accident. Her golden wings caught the light again, and Victoria found herself staring at their reflection in the window. 20 years of pride in Shadowhawk's excellence in maintaining the highest standards. But what if those standards had become walls instead of benchmarks? The intercom crackled. Instructor Hawthorne, Commander Sterling requests your presence regarding the Cross situation. Victoria's throat tightened. She'd signed those rejection letters, too trusted the system believed in preserving Shadowhawk's prestigious legacy. But watching Maya work, seeing Captain Cross's gift live on in his daughter, have we become what we once fought against? The question escaped her lips as she studied her reflection, the golden wings now seeming to mock her. 2 decades ago, she'd been the outsider, the woman fighting to prove herself in a male-dominated field. Captain Cross had been her champion, challenging the old guard's prejudices. The surveillance footage played on loop Maya's precise movements, her intuitive understanding of aircraft systems, her father's determination burning in her eyes. Victoria's carefully constructed worldview began to crack. An alert flashed on her screen. Maya's latest maintenance report on the Phantom Wing. Not just thorough, but innovative. She'd identified a critical flaw in the new hydraulic system, one that even the designers had missed. A flaw that could have cost lives. Like father, like daughter. Victoria murmured, remembering how Captain Cross had once saved her life by spotting a similar issue. The memory of his voice rang clear. Talent doesn't care about rank or background, Victoria. Remember that when you wear those wings. She hadn't remembered. She'd forgotten let herself become part of the very system she'd once fought against. The weight of this realization pressed down harder than her golden wings ever had. Your father would be ashamed of me, Maya, Victoria whispered to the frozen image on her screen. But perhaps it's not too late to make it right. The intercom buzzed again. Commander Sterling's voice impatient. Instructor Hawthorne. Victoria squared her shoulders, feeling the weight of her choices, past and future. The security footage continued its silent testimony, Maya's expertise mocking every rejection letter Victoria had signed. Type legacy if you've ever discovered you've become what you once fought against. A new jet roared past its shadow, briefly darkening her office. In that moment of darkness, Victoria saw with painful clarity how far Shadowhawk had strayed from its founding principles. How far she had strayed. The elite training facility had become a fortress of privilege, keeping out the very talent it claimed to nurture. And she, Victoria Hawthorne, had been its faithful guardian, forgetting her own battle against these same barriers. Her hands moved to her golden wings, touching them not with pride now, but with growing understanding. They were meant to lift people up, not hold them down. Victoria Hawthorne's hands trembled as emergency klaxons shattered the pristine silence of Shadowhawk's phantom wing. Red warning lights bathed her once immaculate uniform in a hellish glow, transforming her reflection in the polished window into something almost demonic. 6 hours had passed since Maya Cross had dared to challenge her authority, and now everything was unraveling. The elite pilots, her carefully selected, perfectly groomed products, stood frozen before the malfunctioning systems. Their paralysis confirmed her deepest, most terrifying fear. She had created automatons, not aviators. Years of enforcing rigid protocols, of crushing initiative in favor of blind obedience, had led to this moment of spectacular failure. Through the chaos, Victoria watched Maya Cross move with the fluid grace of someone who truly understood the aircraft's soul. Not from manuals or simulators, but from years of hands-on experience that Victoria had dismissed as mere maintenance work. The sight of Maya's confidence made Victoria's prized golden wings feel suddenly heavy, almost burning against her chest. "Ma'am, systems are cascading!" Lieutenant Chen's voice cracked with panic. "The backup protocols aren't responding." Victoria's empire of absolute control was crumbling in real time. Worse security cameras were capturing every second of this disaster. She could already imagine the headlines, "Elite Training Facility Saved by Maintenance Worker." The thought made her stomach churn. Her fingers brushed against her golden wings, her symbol of authority that had always brought such comfort. Now they felt like shackles. In the emergency lighting, their gleam seemed mocking rather than majestic. She watched as Maya reached the cockpit door, stopped by the security lock that only Victoria could override. A memory flashed, Maya's earlier words echoing through the hangar. "Your procedures are killing these aircraft. They need to breathe, not just follow rules." Victoria had sneered then. Now those words rang with prophetic weight. The decision crystallized in her mind, accompanied by the bitter taste of defeat. Victoria stepped forward, her heels clicking against the floor in a rhythm that felt like a countdown to her own professional execution. With trembling fingers, she pressed her authorization code into the keypad. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss that seemed to signal the end of her unchallenged reign. Maya didn't even glance at her as she slipped into the cockpit, immediately beginning to work with the natural fluidity that no amount of formal training could instill. Victoria's phone buzzed. A notification showed that footage from the emergency was already circulating online. Shadowhawk Fails was trending with clips of her elite pilots standing helpless while a maintenance worker took command. Each passing second felt like another nail in her career's coffin. Her carefully constructed world of absolute authority was dissolving around her. The respect, the fear, the control, all evaporating like morning dew under the harsh sun of reality. And perhaps most terrifying of all, a small part of her felt relief. Standing in the pulsing red light, Victoria Hawthorne faced the truth she had denied for so long. Her system wasn't creating excellence. It was stifling it. The very people she had dismissed and demeaned might be the only ones who could save what she had built. Through the observation window, she watched Maya's hands dance across the controls with intimate familiarity. The warning klaxons began to quiet, one by one, like a dying symphony of her own hubris. Have you ever watched your perfect world collapse? Victoria whispered to her reflection, the golden wings on her chest catching one final flash of emergency lighting. Drop if you've seen your certainties crumble. The night wasn't over, but Victoria Hawthorne's reign at Shadowhawk would never be the same. And somewhere deep inside, past the fear and humiliation, a small voice whispered that perhaps that was exactly what this facility needed. Officer Marcus Sterling's hands trembled as he gripped the podium, the polished oak no longer a symbol of authority, but a crutch keeping him upright. The security footage played behind him in merciless detail. Maya Cross executing a perfect emergency landing of the Phantom Wing, her movements precise and practiced, despite never having official clearance to fly. This is a violation of protocol, he stammered, but his voice lacked its usual commanding edge. The review board members exchanged glances, their silence more damning than any rebuke. The golden wings on his chest, once gleaming with pride, now felt like lead weights. Victoria Hawthorne's testimony echoed in his mind from hours earlier. Maya Cross saved 12 cadets while you were busy checking credentials. The words had struck him like physical blows, each syllable exposing the rot in his carefully maintained system. His phone buzzed incessantly. TrueSkill was trending nationwide with millions watching the leaked footage of Maya's rescue. CNN had already picked up the story. Elite aviation facility faces discrimination allegations. The comment sections were flooded with similar stories, each one another nail in his coffin. Commander Sterling. Admiral Chen's voice cut through his spiral. Would you care to explain why Ms. Cross was denied training despite her clearly demonstrated expertise? Marcus Sterling's throat constricted. The security footage shifted to show him blocking Maya from the simulator room. Just yesterday, his face twisted with contempt. She doesn't belong here, his recorded voice sneered. The irony tasted bitter now. He started, but the words died as Victoria Hawthorne entered the room, flanked by a dozen maintenance workers. Each wore their work badges proudly displayed next to newly pinned pilot wings, a silent rebellion against his authority. The motif of his command medallion, which he'd polished obsessively each morning, now felt cold against his chest. His fingers traced its edge, remembering how he'd used it to intimidate countless workers like Maya. Type skills over status. If you believe talent shouldn't be limited by title, the hashtag campaign was exploding across social media, with aviation professionals worldwide sharing their own stories of discrimination. Commander Sterling. Victoria's voice carried across the room. Your system nearly cost us 12 lives today. Maya Cross didn't just save those cadets. She exposed everything wrong with how we judge skill and worth. Marcus Sterling watched as his carefully constructed world crumbled. The review board members were already writing their decisions, their pens scratching like vultures picking at the corpse of his career. His phone continued to buzz. TrueSkill had reached over 5 million mentions. I move to immediately suspend Commander Sterling pending full investigation. Admiral Chen announced each word another blow to Marcus Sterling's fragile ego. And to implement immediate reforms in our training qualification procedures. The vote was unanimous. Marcus Sterling's command medallion was removed, the metal cold and lifeless in Admiral Chen's hands. As security escorted him out, he caught a glimpse of Maya Cross in her maintenance uniform, standing tall among the pilots. Have you ever watched your empire fall? Share this video to support equal opportunity in aviation training and toward TrueSkill. The doors closed behind Marcus Sterling with a final damning click, leaving him alone with the knowledge that his reign of discrimination had ended not with a bang, but with the quiet competence of those he'd tried so hard to suppress. Commander Marcus Sterling stands alone in his office at Shadowhawk, staring at the gleaming golden wings that had once symbolized his absolute authority. 24 hours ago, he'd believed himself untouchable. Now his perfectly constructed world lies in ruins, shattered by a maintenance worker who dared to challenge the natural order he'd spent decades maintaining. The morning light streams through his window, catching on the box of personal items he must clear from his desk. His hands shake as he reaches for his wings, the same ones he'd polished so proudly yesterday while sneering at Maya Cross. A news alert chimes on his phone. Sterling Falls continues trending, accompanied by security footage of his confrontation with Maya. His stomach churns at the sight of his own face, twisted with rage as he'd threatened her. "Your kind doesn't belong here." His recorded voice echoes, followed by Maya's calm response about merit over privilege. The video cuts to the moment when federal aviation investigators stormed his office boxes of falsified training records in hand. His empire built on carefully curated bloodlines and old money connections crumbles in high definition for the world to see. Commander Sterling's fingers trace the edge of his wings one last time. "I was wrong," he whispers the words feeling foreign on his tongue. "All those years, all those talented people I turned away because they didn't fit my image of what a pilot should be." The weight of his actions crashes over him like a wave, each face he'd rejected now haunting his thoughts. An investigator appears in his doorway. "The press conference begins in 10 minutes, Commander Sterling. The Aviation Board expects your full confession." Sterling nods, understanding the choreography of his own downfall. He'll stand before the cameras, admit to decades of discrimination, acknowledge the systemic bias he perpetuated. The evidence Maya uncovered leaves no room for denial. Years of qualified candidates rejected for their background while less capable legacy students sailed through. Walking to the training hangar for the last time, Sterling passes the wall of past graduating classes, photos showing the same privileged faces year after year. Soon, these will be replaced with images reflecting true merit, not manufactured pedigree. The sound of his footsteps echoes through the corridor, each step marking the death of old Shadowhawk and the birth of something new. The press conference podium awaits cameras trained on his face. Sterling removes his wings, placing them carefully on the podium. "I stand before you today to confess that I failed not just Maya Cross, but countless others who deserved their wings. For generations, we claimed to train the best while deliberately excluding excellence that didn't match our prejudiced expectations. Today, that ends." His voice breaks as he continues, "These wings represent a system that valued birth over worth, prejudice over potential. They belong in a museum alongside other relics of discrimination we've overcome." He hands the wings to the Aviation Board representative, who announces the facility's transformation into an inclusive, merit-based program. Later, watching movers pack up his office, Sterling notices Maya's original application still marked with his dismissive red stamp. "Type, wings for all, if you believe talent knows no privilege," he murmurs, echoing the hashtag now trending worldwide. The words that had once seemed threatening now feel like a promise of redemption. As security escorts him from the building, Sterling catches a glimpse of the new training schedule, a diverse group of candidates selected purely on skill. His legacy will be both a cautionary tale and a catalyst for change. "Share this moment," he thinks, "not for me, but for every Maya Cross who deserves their wings." The sun sets on his last day at Shadowhawk, his golden wings now displayed in the facility's museum with a simple plaque, "Never again will privilege outweigh potential." Commander Marcus Sterling walks away, leaving behind a transformed institution where excellence truly knows no pedigree, his fall ensuring others rise.